Okay, so today's guest on the ProLongevity podcast is a friend and colleague, GP Dr. David Oliver, who I think we first met, David, on the UK Low Carb podcast when you and I and a couple of other miscreants were on that. Is that right?
Yes, I think that is right. That was just around about a year ago, I think. Yeah, on Dan's podcast. That's right.
Yeah, and Dan's become a good mate of mine, and I think fantastic guy, very much trying to facilitate this whole discussion around low carb and health, and how you can live that lifestyle. But I thought it might be quite interesting to start perhaps asking about your own journey towards this, because like me, you were conventionally trained, but you've ended up taking and you're still obviously dealing with patients in the normal circumstances of the COVID crisis, such as they are. What led you down this path, and what conclusions are you reaching?
It was quite sudden, really. I went to a GP update course, and this was about 3 years ago. And somebody there was talking about diabetes, and they were talking about the Michael Mosley 8-week blood sugar diet book, and as a sort of potential brief intervention for us to consider helping type 2 people with type 2 diabetes. And so we got a few of those books and started handing them out to people, and quite quickly we suddenly discovered that a lot of these people were doing really well, and that really made us sit up and listen, really, and started to read and research and start to just get more and more involved. And we certainly started using that book as a vehicle, and I think we dished out around about 100 of those books to start off with. And people started putting their type 2 diabetes into remission, and they started to lose weight in a spectacular way that they had never done before. And yes, so we were, that was enough for us. And I've done it very much with my colleague, Kim Andrews. There's two of us driving it at our Freshwell low carb project. And it grew from there, really. I went to the Public Health Collaboration Conference in 2019, I think, and that was very, very inspiring, and that really sort of was the catalyst for me, listening to lots of amazing speakers and just realizing the enormity of the problem. And I came away from that really thinking, right, what should we do? How are we going to do this? And I like the idea about becoming a low carb community, like being I've got 7,500 patients. How can I deliver this to my population? So yeah, very much about the community, and really how are we going to make the best of our 10-minute consultations. We found a lot of people, we sort of rather hijacked the conversation. People thought they might be coming in for a medication review, well, they were, or a type 2 diabetes review, or any sort of potential related thing. And that's when we sort of kind of gave them this new idea and said, well, there is another way. We might be able to get you off these pills, or you may be at a crossroads. It may be that your diabetes is not quite so well controlled, so we could try a pill, or we could a new pill, or we could try this instead. And a lot of people were very receptive to the idea. And so after that, it was that really made us think about building a website, because with these 10-minute consultations, we were finding it very difficult to really get all the information across. The other thing we found was maybe 10% of people we gave the Michael Mosley book to seem to respond to it and do brilliantly with it. And then there was possibly maybe 90% of the population who maybe took the book away and didn't read it, or maybe sort of read a chapter, or just couldn't get to grips with it. And there are, whilst that's a fantastic book and it's got a lot of got us started, not everybody wants to do an 800 calorie, very low calorie diet, which is pretty tough. And also we're finding the the whole concept of calories. We wanted to move away from that. We find calories, as I'm sure you do, an unhelpful concept largely.
Yep.
So we built the website so that instead of spending 20 minutes that we didn't have explaining it all in the consultation, we could give them a brief introduction, give them a leaflet, and point them towards the website. And that was it really. We were looking for something at the time that just gave a fairly simple synopsis that wasn't too overwhelming, that didn't have a paywall, and you could just go there and learn the basics. And that's sort of been our philosophy. That's been our philosophy through and through, really. So that's how. Yes, we built up the website like that, and then people came back to us saying, "Well, you've told us what not to eat. What should I eat? Tell me what to eat. Give us some ideas." And that's when Kim, my colleague, started doing her 4-week rotating meal planner, which we also offer, which is available on the website. And we've had a lot of very positive feedback about that. A lot of people find it very useful, just to really give some ideas. And it was really born quite literally from Kim's kitchen table. Just it's the food she really enjoys eating, and her and her husband just started scribbling it all down and produced it, and that's gone down very well. And version 2 is just volume 2 is in production at the moment, and we're hoping to release that soon. So
I think, like many of us, you kind of stumbled upon all of this to some extent serendipitously.
Yes. Yeah.
I was conventionally trained, and I thought statins were magic bullets, and calories in, calories out, and low fat, and all of that stuff. And it's interesting that you mentioned Michael Mosley, because that was kind of my first foray, really, was his original program. Was it Eat, Fast, and Live Longer? And that was the original 5-2 diet.
Yeah.
And I watched that program, and I thought, well, I could do that. Having spent, I was a fat kid and a fat adult, and the hungrier I got, the fatter I got, the hungrier I got. And I tried the conventional wisdom of exercising a bit more and eating a bit less. And I could lose some weight, but I could never sustain it. And I realized now what no one really chooses to be fat. What drives being fat, I think, is hunger. And once you're no longer hungry all the time, and I call it the tyranny of food, I can now pick and choose what I eat and when I eat. So if I go, and I still regularly go to professional meetings, and you go to the meeting and what's served up is chocolate croissants and orange juice and a load of sandwiches. We're far from modelling healthy behaviours. Most health professionals are being served up with this kind of food. I just don't eat because I'm not hungry. And I look at that and I just see a bowl full of sugar. And I think probably one of us said this on the podcast. Once you see this, you can't unsee it. And once you start practicing this way, it's just impossible to go back. So I think there are 7 GPs in your group.
In my practice, we've got 6 GPs, and we've got a couple of advanced nurse practitioners as well. Yeah.
And has this rubbed off on all of the GPs, or are some of them sort of carrying on regardless of the old paradigm?
I think it's rubbed off to some extent, to a variable extent, on everybody. Everybody seems to be quite into it to a degree, and I don't think there's anyone who is sort of anti it or opposed to it, and I think if anybody's looking for weight loss or better type 2 diabetes control, and they haven't come across low carb, I think they would certainly, they would certainly suggest it. So I think we're all on board as a GP practice, although certainly myself and Kim are the most vociferous about it, that's for sure.
And I was looking at some of the testimonials. I think one of the testimonials on your website is actually one of the GPs.
I'm just trying to remember. You might need to jog
Well,
jog my memory on
yeah,
that.
yeah. I'll
But
put up a page of testimonials at some point. So,
yeah,
what what do you think are the fundamental principles and paradigms here in all of this? And as a corollary of that, why have we got all of us got this so fundamentally wrong for so long? Do you think?
I think it's sort of. Well, I think nutritional epidemiology is so incredibly complicated and difficult to prove anything. I think it's dogma, isn't it? Really, I just think that people get taught this stuff at med school or pharmacy school or whichever
Yeah,
profession school, and it was just, came out of the, was it 60s 70s, and nobody's really come up with a better idea, and it I mean, they have, but it hasn't really caught on, and I think
right.
it's slowly turning, but it is bewildering. And I suppose it's also bewildering that 3 years ago I was very much, it was only 3 years ago I was very much, talking the same language, that you need low fat, you need to just simply reduce the number of calories compared to the amount of calories you're burning, really. And you look back, don't you, and think that's ridiculous. And you feel guilty, but that I've been doing that for 17 years, and I suppose, you really want to make up for it now. But why are we still doing it? I've got no idea, and I think that's why this, the likes of you, myself, and a lot of the people we know in our community are so passionate about it, because, like you say, once you've seen it, as I say, you can't unsee it, and the results. I've been trying so hard to get people to encourage them to lose weight in quite a sort of positive and proactive and
Mm,
encouraging way. And I don't think I was particularly blaming people or whatever.
mm.
But as I say, as soon as you start to see the results, it is just, it's just unbelievable, isn't it, really? But quite why I persist, I just think it's dogma.
I think I agree with you about that. I do a lot of talks, as you know, to GPs, individual practices, and groups. And I gave a talk, last, I think just pre-COVID, so probably 18 months or so ago, to a group. And there were two GP registrars in the group, as probably, the whole practice met and discussed all this. And I thought, well, I'll model the thing. So I bought them lunch, but needless to say, it wasn't a lunch full of the usual sandwiches. It would have, it was a mixture of fat and protein with no carbs to be seen. Um, and I said to these two GP registrars, how much information did you get on sleep, nutrition, and exercise in your to date? One of them said none on any of it, and one of them said, "Oh yeah, we had one day on nutrition,
Mm.
and it's a brand new course." So I got one day's worth of nutrition, but anyone who qualified before me or before that, nothing. And it seems a fairly fundamental principle. If you go back to the fundamentals of, let food be thy medicine and let medicine be thy food. Isn't it quite
Mm.
extraordinary that none of us have any teaching on nutrition, nutritional science, the flaws of all of this? And I kind of feel
Yeah.
this hierarchy. So, the pharmacists have this particular expertise around the use of medication, how to get the best out of it at the least cost for the smallest, the least side effects. Doctors' particular expertise is around the diagnosis. And yet none of us are taught this we're all taught this fundamental science, but we're not taught anything in those areas, which are the key drivers. And we're all kind of born into this milieu, I think, of escalating disease. So we all know that everyone's getting fatter and sicker. We don't really question what's the root cause of it. And when you go back and discover the roots, it's so bleeding obvious, isn't it? I mean, it's not
Mm.
difficult. What's difficult is reconciling yourself with, well, why didn't I know this? Why wasn't I taught it? And why isn't anyone talking about it? So I
Yeah.
guess because your practice, I think, is part of a group. And you seem to have got the other practices in the area also on board to some extent. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So the the primary care the primary care network involves 6 practices, and so that from our 7,500, we were a total of about 53,000. And myself and Kim presented to them around about 18 months ago, and it's culminated essentially in September this year, us recruiting a health and well-being coach full time, purely for the low carb project. So that was sort of my pitch to the group, and we showed the group what we'd done, and so we started up a course based on a lot of what I'd seen from the public health collaboration ambassadors and on what they do, and borrowing a lot of their stuff that they kindly lent. We've knocked up 6 half-hour videos, which was initially, go back to last September, things were pretty shut down, and so everything was on Zoom. So she got groups of people together, and they watched the videos, and then they had an hour to chat it and discuss it as a group. That seems to have moved more and more towards one-to-one sort of chatting and following up. There seems to be less appetite for the Zoom groups in our particular area. So so she's been Sharon, our health coach, has been doing really well, and seeing a lot of patients. And we've just got our second health and wellbeing coach. I think there is some other stuff that they are doing between them, but there's a lot of low carb work, and we've got some results we've got some Freshwell results, but we've also got some results from the primary care network. And I think after the 3-month follow-up, the average weight loss and it is for weight loss and diabetes control, but it's quite focused on weight loss.
Yeah.
It was a 6 kilo weight loss on average for 3 months, which is relatively short follow-up, but we've been lacking in admin hours to be able to chase the patients up. It's quite hard to actually get outcome data when you don't have a kind of research project and funding and all of that stuff. But the feedback's been really good. The other nice thing about it is that the group have there's a Sharon's built up a Facebook group. I think there's about 400 people in it, but they're all local, which is nice, and they all talk to each other and they all support each other. And we've got a couple of expert patients who've just picked it up and run with it, and who've always got some really good answers to a lot of the questions on the group. So the Facebook group has been really supportive, and we've just started doing face-to-face group education evenings, and that is patient-led as well. In fact, one of our patients, who's a public health collaboration ambassador, and another public health collaboration ambassador who lives not too far away, and they basically run this monthly education evening, which is great, and so it's really nice that again that is being sort of run by someone else, other than me, if you see what I mean. But just because we have so little time to do so much, and that's been running really well. And in addition to that, we've been kind of talking to our local establishments. Our local post office supplies all the ingredients to the Kim's meal planner, which is lovely. And some of our local restaurants have started offering low carb options. It's funny, we wrote to them about 2 years ago when we were starting. We were super keen, saying, "Oh, do you want to get involved with our project?" And we got just absolutely zero replies whatsoever. And then after a while, I think people start drifting in there saying, "Well, have you got any low carb options?" And it's becoming, beginning to become what we were hoping for. Back when we started, was beginning to start feeling like a kind of low carb community, and so as part of these restaurants starting to offer low carb options, The patients have got together and started to organise low carb evenings at these restaurants as well. So that's sort of happening on a monthly basis as well. So it's kind of nice the way that it's, people are looking out for each other. Pardon?
It's creating a complete ecosystem, isn't it? And enabling each
other. I think so, yeah. And that's really what we wanted. And we kind of like the idea that, once you build enough critical mass and momentum, people start having low carb conversations across their, their fence with their neighbours, talking about it down the pub, and they, hopefully get to a stage in the end where they don't really need us anymore. So, or at least,
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so. But we could maybe sort of, it's a good sort of aim, isn't it? It's a good place to try and steer towards a little bit. Or they might maybe need us a little bit less. But I can't imagine.
When they founded the NHS, that was the whole idea, that you'd improve patient health so well that you wouldn't need it. And it hasn't entirely that track, to say the least.
I didn't know that, but that's very much my sort of, I don't know, rather overzealous ambition. I think. I think a good place to aim.
I think the NHS budget now is 165 billion. And I think if you ask people what benefit we're getting, and I'm not knocking the NHS, I've worked in it all my life, I'm a passionate supporter of it, but I think the evidence is that in our return on that investment of 165 billion is 2-point-something years of poor quality life. And most of the money gets spent at the end of life. And we don't really deal with, the prevention agenda is broadly speaking absent. Lip service paid to it. I go into these various diabetes talks and talks about cardiovascular disease, and they say, of course, the first and foremost thing we should do is lifestyle intervention, but here's the drug. So that it doesn't even last a sentence before they're on to the latest drugs and the latest intervention, and just a lip service is being paid to actually the prevention agenda.
Yeah, I think that's, I can identify with that, really. It's just like, I think as a practitioner, sometimes you sort of give up because you're giving the wrong advice, and because you're telling people to eat more starchy carbohydrates and cut their calories and things, it doesn't work. So you just, as I say, yes, it's almost like, like you say, it's lip service. It's just, this is something I have to say before we move on to the drugs.
Just SGLT2 inhibitors, or whatever the flavour of the month is. So there's also a lot of cynicism, which is the patients are not interested. They just want to come in, have the 10 minutes and walk out with a prescription, and they want the prescription to be the answer. That's certainly not the way that someone like Dr. David Unwin talks, albeit there are really some patients who are resistant and really want to rely on a medication. But what's your experience? What percentage of patients, given the opportunity to, well, you can take the medication or you can make some lifestyle changes, what responses do you get?
There's definitely a population who aren't interested. I think that's the case, but I think that maybe before going into low carb, I would have thought, I think my perception was maybe, I don't know what sort of percentage, but I would say definitely the majority are very interested in lifestyle change. Once you explain that what you've got is something different and something that actually does work. I would say that 80% of people are probably at least interested. A fair portion of those just can't necessarily take it beyond that. But a good half, I think, will definitely give it a go. And as I say, that's way more than I ever thought. And you don't know till you ask. And there are some people who you think, oh, you're never going to do this. I can't imagine you ever doing this. And they do. And you can never quite tell who it's going to be, and vice versa. You just think, oh, this person's perfect. He or she is going to absolutely jump on this and nail it, and then
they
just sort of say, oh, give me the drugs. So yeah, I would certainly say many more people than I ever thought are much more interested in doing things without drugs.
And you were saying an average of 6 kilos weight loss at the 3 months endpoint, which might not sound very much weight loss, but actually the evidence is the 5% percentage of body weight lost has huge significance in terms of health consequences. So actually 6 kilos is really a significant amount.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is, and also it's, as you and I know, it's not about necessarily the weight. It's about where it's coming from, where you're losing it from as well. If you're losing visceral fat, fat from the organs, then that's going to be more significant from losing it from elsewhere. We also, as I might have mentioned to you before, we did this. We had a weight loss-ometer in the surgery, where we got people to sort of we used the computer to calculate a cumulative weight loss, and we thought it would be fun to aim for a ton of weight loss for the community. And we were very pleased when we managed to hit that target after just over a year. And on top of that, we managed to get a paper published that highlighted this, and that was interesting in a different way, because our course was a 6-week course where people went through the videos and had follow-up, and it was much more involved. Our paper was based on a brief intervention. So the idea was we were looking at people who just were given low-carb advice in the consultation room, and we documented that on the computer, and that was all we looked at. We didn't know whether those people had gone away and done it, or just gone away and ignored it. And we found out of that lot, out of the sort of 300 odd people who came back from that, there was about 3.3 kilo weight loss on average. And when you think, well, 3.3 kilos, that's nothing. But if you think about, well, probably a good half of them didn't necessarily take up the advice, then as a brief intervention, if even half people listen to what you're saying from a brief intervention, like, other examples of a brief intervention would be, have you thought about giving up smoking? Have you thought about cutting down your alcohol? Most people don't, but actually having quite a lot of success just from a brief intervention was quite encouraging, really.
Yeah, I know, that's pretty well documented science, isn't it? So presumably you're saving big bucks on your drugs bill as well.
It's quite hard to measure, but yes, we did have some feedback from our one of our CCG pharmacy advisors, who told us that in real terms, that our diabetes spend dropped in real terms by £12,000 in a year. So and so whilst most people were, so ours is
going in the other direction, right? Everybody else is spending even more over that.
Everyone else was going up by maybe 6%, and we went down by 6%. And that's just on the drugs. On the diabetes drugs, we were also deprescribing people off blood pressure medication, stomach acid medication, that kind of thing, and hopefully saving people. Hopefully saving. There's certainly one or two people whose joint pains have disappeared, and potentially not gone for surgery as well. So it's very hard to quantify the total the total cost saving, but I imagine it's several times that, isn't it?
It's got to be. I'd like to see a proper econometric evaluation of some of this, because the drugs bill, I think the UK drugs bill is something around 20 billion.
Mm.
And I used to adhere to what most people in the NHS think, which is the NHS is just fundamentally underfunded. And I
Mm.
now think it's underfunded on the basis of the current paradigm. But if we shifted the paradigm, actually the funding would be there. And you think about
Mm.
the in-year saving just on the drugs bill. I was on Eddie Houston's podcast, and he said, "Well, if everyone followed the advice, how much could we get the drugs bill down?" And I said, "I don't know, 80%." Because
Mm.
almost all the medication that we're giving, vast majority is in some way related to metabolic syndrome, and that would fund a different type of service, I think.
Yeah, I think it's doable, but like you say, it would require an awful lot of culture change, wouldn't it?
I think it's spreading. I mean, I kind of, you know, I gave a talk to the Wessex GPs, and there was 120 GPs on that call. Myself, Asim, Malhotra, and David Unwin. I think it was over a couple of courses. So to get 120 GPs talking low carb, and they all paid for the pleasure of being there. And what I found is what GPs are incredibly bright people. Once they get it, they just run with it, and the transformation is very quick. And
Mm.
as to say, once you see it with your own eyes, it just changes your practice because you just can't carry the same way. So I thought perhaps the other thing I'd like to do with you is explore what you've done with your own website, because I think there's an absolutely stunning set of resources there. And maybe you talk us through that. So if I share my screen, and I'll try and see if I can be your beautiful assistant, just talk us through this project, and then maybe I can click through, and you can tell us what's there, what you've done, and so on and so forth.
Um, yes, I mean, it needs a little bit of a restructure, this website, and it's on my list of things to do. But I mean, yes, the most recent thing we've done, which I don't think we've talked about yet, is the is our app, which we have put together, which is a combination really of everything that we've done. So it's got six modules, educational modules in app form, with a lot of free basic information, structured education. We've done a sort of interactive version of David Unwin's infographics, which we've called Sugargraphics. And we've also put Kim's meal planner in there. There's a sort of electronic version of that. And we've also built in a progress checker if people want to track their weight, their BMI, and their waist circumference. And so whilst we don't collect any data, there's no pop-ups, there's no premium memberships. It's all completely free. And yeah, that's been downloaded from the Google Play Store and the App Store about 6,000 times so far. There's a constant trickle of people downloading it, and we're just hoping that it's something that people can use, perhaps as an alternative to the NHS weight loss app. Perhaps it's not the NHS weight loss app, I'm sure some people find helpful, but ultimately it's not a low carb app. So we really wanted to have some.
All the NHS resources continue to be based on calories in, calories out. Fat is,
Yeah.
don't eat fat, feed yourself with carbs and, healthy whole grains and all that stuff that's been proven not to work.
Yeah.
How did this app, I mean, producing an app's not a 5-minute job, and I guess you've done it in your own time with no resources. I mean, it's a stunning thing to have done.
Yeah, I've got a friend who's sort of in the business, and my wife bumped into him in the supermarket.
As you do.
Just as you do, just in
the centre aisles, I hope, at the periphery.
In the vegetable aisle.
Yeah.
And we hadn't seen each other for a while, and I think the last time I'd spoken to him, I was on a bit of a downer about the job and just getting a bit fed up with it. And he said, "Oh, is David still working for the NHS?" I think he was thinking that I was going to quit. I was having had such a hard time, and said, "No, he's completely he's completely obsessed by low carb. He's getting some amazing results, and he's just absolutely he's rediscovered his mojo in and so that sort of piqued his interest. And at a time when he was not really looking, he was kind of looking for a new project, and he'd perhaps put on a little bit of weight himself. So so he came around and had a chat. I should talk to him about the website, and and he kind of went away and lost some weight, felt great, and was a convert. And we decided between us that I would put the content together and he would put the technical side together. And a year later we produced the app, and we really wanted it to be free, no strings attached, no, we're not getting anything from anybody, but just giving people free information. And so the app was born. So we just really wanted to just give free resources out. It's just something that I want to give to my patients and my primary care network patients, and to share with anybody else.
Have you followed have you followed Tim Spector's COVID tracker app?
I have, yes. That's a sort of on a slightly different level, isn't it? I mean, it's
or something. I'm just thinking that are you tracking are you using it to track anything? Because the potential to do tracking and collect some of the data would be enormously powerful potentially.
Yes, we're working on that. At the moment, we're not collecting any data. We don't know anything about anybody whatsoever. We're looking on an enhancement which will simply completely anonymously track, weight, BMI, data, etc. And so, I'm hoping that maybe out of the 6,000 people who downloaded it, maybe 100 of them or something, that will be tracking their weight and things, and it will be quite interesting to start looking at that data, and potentially be able to go to the powers that be, people in the NHS who might be interested in that outcome data. So that's the app. So that's our surgery.
When you think of the huge amount of money that's invested in the National Diabetes Prevention Programme, with, let's say, equivocal outcomes, and what one GP practice has managed to achieve, I mean, it's astonishing. So this is a bit, I just thought we might go through some of the pages here, and you could talk us through what you've done and what the resources are.
Yes, so this is the surgery. This is the surgery website you're on. This is the main surgery website rather than the actual low carb project.
All right, so maybe it's not shared. So let me come back and share it again. Sometimes it doesn't track very well. Share. So that should show the low carb project now.
No, I'm looking at the main surgery one there.
Oh, okay. So I wonder why.
You might be. You've got a hyperlink down the bottom there of the Freshwell look. Maybe you can click on there and it will go to the low carb one. It's looking promising. There we go. We're back on there as well.
Yep.
So and the next bit there is really about the primary care network and how we have got together as a bunch of GPs with our health coaches, and how we're really offering this program to the wider population. There you can download on the meal planner, and it's a PDF that's free to download. I think we've downloaded that. I think there's we've had at least 12,000 downloads of that so far.
The new one's coming I remember when you were launching, because I was tweeting with you when you launched the app, and we were getting responses all over the world. You were getting responses all over the world, and lots of complaints. Yeah. Why can't I get it in my country, which was nowhere near the UK? And you were like, you were apologising. I'm saying, the guy's apologising. What's he apologising for? You're not Apple, for heaven's sake. But I think you've got it. Have you tracked how many downloads there've been from all over the world? Have you got that kind of data? It was really impressive.
I do have that data. I can't tell you off the top of my head. I would say the vast majority of is the UK, quite a bit in the USA and Australia, I would say. And so this page on the website is really just it is just a very, very basic. If you read our homepage, you will have a vague understanding of what to do. It just gives a step-by-step guide to the very basics of low carb. So it's got a long low carb, and there's a few links. So that link goes to I suppose the difference between the website you can kind of branch out, and we do a lot of signposting to other websites, like you've clicked on the Diet Doctor one there. Whereas the app is very much self-contained. It's just we hope that the app, you won't really need anything else. So the website and the app are slightly different functions in the sense that the app is hoping that it's self-contained, whereas, as I say, whereas the website you can sort of you can go off at different tangents and things like that.
And now we come to the Eat Badly plate.
Yes. I think I wrote that shortly after coming away from the from my public health collaboration conference, and I think there was a fair bit of I think I was still I'm still outraged, but I was particularly outraged at that particular moment, because so there's a lot of resources on there, and I think the testimonials section is quite I think that's quite sort of inspiring. These are real people. That's one of our patients who's on the Facebook group, and fantastic help to us. And that was 4 stone weight loss in January. She's lost another 2 stone since then, so she's lost 6 stone altogether now. This here was possibly my most dramatic case of somebody who was a new presentation of type 2 diabetes, and really had a very, very, very high HbA1c. And I think most people would look at that and sort of reach for the prescription pad fairly sharpish. But he was we had a chat about that, and he wasn't too symptomatic. It wasn't like he was desperately ill with it. He was just tired and overweight, really. And so we managed to get his HbA1c, which was our basic measure of diabetes control, down from 114, which you and I will agree is pretty dire. Down to sort of down to 47, which is just below the diabetic threshold, within 3 months. And interestingly, we could also see that actually his presumed fatty liver disease was biochemically was normalized within a month, and his cholesterol and triglycerides, which is so the cholesterol HDL ratio, which is obviously it's more of it's one of the more important markers, and certainly the triglycerides as well, they came crashing down. So those graphs, to anyone who's kind of medically minded, will recognize that.
You never get results like this with the medication, right? You just don't.
No chance. Just to emphasize this chap, he hasn't had any medication. All of that has been achieved through lifestyle change. And he didn't have he wasn't eating loads of ultra processed food before. He was just eating lots of perhaps too much wholemeal bread and lots of fruit juice, and lots of fruit, and but he's done amazingly well. So
this guy there's one Dr. Andrews is here, medical doctor.
This gentleman was a patient of Kim Andrews. She deals with she's actually the diabetes doctor in the practice, but I just I have a few people who come and see me as well. So he'd been on insulin 72 units daily for 12 years, and for type 2 diabetes, and very quickly lost some weight and didn't need to be on the insulin anymore. I think he's I don't know him too well myself, but I think he's off all of his diabetes medication, and what a transformation.
Yeah.
And this man was off his blood pressure medication and just sort of feeling amazing, really. So, and there's lots, just these testimonials keep coming in. Yeah, and on there we've just got some. We've tried to sort of condense the basics and signpost people in the right direction. I need to kind of keep this up to date. We recommend a few books for the course. We try and sort of keep it simple. We recommend the Caldesi books, which we think are fantastic.
There are two things I recommend a lot to clients. One is Fiber Flower from Longevity.
Yeah.
So he's got tons of. I met them originally through the Public Health Collaboration, and if you use Fiber Flower and cook the meals in the Caldesi cookbook, you just don't go wrong. And my clients love it.
Yeah.
My still one recommendation is Ivor's book, Eat Rich and Live Long, because it's got so much in there, and it's a few years on now, but basically you wouldn't change a thing really. It's such a complete reference. And the other one I read recently, that's still my number one recommendation, and number two is Robert Lustig's new book, Metabolical. I don't know if you've read it.
I haven't read that. I've certainly heard about it.
I can't recommend it too highly. I learned so much from that book.
Again, I think you just have to pitch part of what we do is in developing these tools to help people learn, is you need to pitch different tools for different people, because some people want to read a book, some people want to go on a website, some people want to go on an app, and there are different books for different people. So everybody's different, and we just sort of try to cover it all, really. So there we've just got a basic just a very basic introduction to the carbohydrate insulin model, I suppose, really, and how it all works. But we just sort of hope. Sorry, go on.
The whole thing, isn't it?
Yeah. So.
Is there anything else that you want to highlight?
From the website, no, I don't think so. I think you've covered the basics. As I say, it's just really something to as a one-stop shop, hopefully, where people can go and get cracking, really.
So we've had pretty much an hour. I'm conscious of time. What are your final concluding thoughts or things you want to leave people with at the end of the podcast?
I think it would be really nice to be able to get this embedded in the NHS, and I think that's what we're sort of trying to contribute towards. I think that this change really ideally needs to come from within, and I think it is an unstoppable momentum, and we've got low carb communities just getting bigger and bigger, and you and I are a member of our one that I started on Telegram, which is for healthcare practitioners, and we're almost up to 300 members there. And all healthcare practitioners who are interested in low carb will be very welcome to contact me if they wanted to join that. They could contact me via email, contact at lowcarbfreshwell.co.uk if they want to, if there's anybody interested in joining that, and that, as I'm sure you'll agree, is a very vibrant,
it is
positive.
It's so vibrant, I can't keep up with it, David.
There are some amazing people on there, and we've got the seriously experienced experts on there, and we've got people who've just started and just after the basics, and nobody minds how what sort of questions are asked, and so if anybody who's a healthcare practitioner wants to join that, they'd be very welcome to contact me.
Brilliant. Listen, David, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. And not just with this, if it was just this one podcast, but I cannot imagine the amount of time you've given to this entire project in the middle of COVID, with all the struggles that we know that we're having. Really take my hat off to you, sir, for an outstanding job. And, if we can support in any way, please do shout.
And thanks very much for your time, Graham. It's been nice to have a chat.
Thank you for listening. And before you leave, if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our media channels. That way you won't miss future episodes with our other amazing guests.